of study exotic systems that are characterized by a very short lifetime and a very asymmetric ratio of neutrons to protons. As you heard yesterday from Catherine's talk, one of the lines that is being pursued in the investigation using radioactive ion beams is the investigation of nuclei that are located around the traditional magic numbers predicted by the shell model. As you can see from this plot, the magic numbers effectively classify the nuclei. Different orbitals in these regions are responsible for the nuclear structure of the system. So what we would like to investigate is what is the physics behind the disappearance or appearance of new magic numbers. The investigation of exotic nuclei is also important because, as you can see from this line that is their process, most of them are important for nuclear astrophysics predictions. And the investigation, pioneering investigation of the light mass regions has shown the novel properties of the strong interaction and challenge our knowledge of nuclear structure. The current facilities that produce radioactive ion beams can be classified in two different techniques. You already heard from Catherine's talk about an example of the fragmentation facility that is NCL. In this case, the radioactive ion beams are produced using a thin target and the fragmentation of the projector. The other technique is the ISO technique that is depicted in this diagram, very schematic, and increasing the use of two accelerators and a peak actinide target. So you basically have the very energetic neutron light projector, neutrons, protons, or alphas, that induce fission in a uranium target, for example. And the radioactive species are produced at rest, and then you ionize these radioactive species and post-accelerate to be delivered to the experimental station. Each of these techniques has different advantages and disadvantages, and actually the current tendency of future radioactive facilities is trying to make a hybrid combination of these two techniques. The experimental data that I will be talking about were taken at the Holyfield radioactive ion beam facility. That is the typical example of an ISO facility. The neutron-rich radioactive nuclei in this laboratory were produced by induced fission of a uranium carbide target. The primary accelerator were cyclotron that produce high-intensity proton beams that were bombarding a uranium carbide target. And the radioactive species, after ionization and mass separation, were injected into the 25 megawatt and then delivered to the experimental station. This facility used to have the nice feature of producing both stable and radioactive beams with very high quality. In this graph, you can see the color code indicates the beam intensity, and since you are since the relative production is based in the fission of uranium, you can see that the radioactive species are concentrated around the mass 80 and mass 130 region. And here you can see the neutron closed shell N=50 and N=82. And you can see why the gamma ray spectroscopy programs were mainly focused in investigating nuclei around these regions. The main idea behind these two programs were basically trying to get a comprehensive picture of the nuclear structure and how it evolves as we move towards neutron-rich nuclei. And in order to do that, we use basically two processes. One is Coulomb excitation, and the other is direct reactions, the few nucleon plasma reactions. And these two techniques, in combination with specialized instrumentation, were used to measure spectroscopic quantities such as energy levels, transition probabilities, and electrical magnetic moments. This is the main experimental setup we use. Here you can see the target position. This is the direction of the incoming beam. In the center surrounded the target is the particle detector, that is a cisma array coupled to 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter photodiodes. And here you can see the angular distribution of these detectors. And the particle identification in this detector is achieved by pulse shape discrimination techniques. Surrounded this particle detector, we have a gamma ray spectrometer based in 11 cover detectors that are for germanium crystals segmented by half and located typically in these positions. The gamma ray efficiency of this array is around 3% at 1 MeV gamma. And a very important feature of combining these two arrays is the segmentation of each of the detector arrays. And the combination of these allows us to have a very nice Doppler correction of the gamma rays coming from the excitation of the project. Using Coulomb excitation for measuring previously unknown nuclei is a very nice tool, because by controlling the energy of the projectile, one can clearly obtain a separation between the nuclear interaction and the electromagnetic interaction. For very low bombarding energies, we can only excite the nucleus exclusively by the electromagnetic field, the tiny electromagnetic field between the target and project. The technique we used was basically use an inverse kinematic reaction. So we have a heavy projectile bombarding a light target, and we basically detect the light particles scattered out, and we use that as a key trigger for reduce the diagram of the gamma ray radiation coming from the excitation of the projector, and also to get an absolute normalization to the Rutherford section. For very low energies, what we had is that this electromagnetic transition probability is proportional to the Rutherford section, so we can basically obtain an absolute measurement of this transition probability. For the nuclei around mass 80, we had scenarios where for both neutrons and protons occupy the same major shell, that is 28 to 50, and these characteristics gives to the nuclei a very large instability character. In particular, for the germanium isotopes, here you can see some experimental evidence that shows a very erratic in this graph that shows the excitation and the variation of the energy levels as function of neutron number. You can see that the erratic behavior of the second zero pulse indicates that some strange shape transition occurs around this isotopic chain. Using both the measurement of quadrupole moments and transfer reaction, one can conclude that for these germanium isotopes, we have the coexistence of two different deformations in the nuclei and a possible shape transition around any quadrupole. Our contribution for completing the spectroscopy of the germanium and selenium isotope chains at the HBF was the measurement of the points in red in this graph that is shown in the right. And we basically extend the systematics to reach n equal 50. And we conclude that since the behavior of this trend is similar to the ones to isotope chains with n larger than 50,